Hey now, and welcome to episode 49 of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been here all along, welcome back. But if this is your first time listening to us, welcome. I'm your host, Ruben, and as always, my man Stan is on the line. How you doing, man?
Doing good, buddy.
Awesome. So, this was another one of our another episode in our Cryptocast series, and this was our first Cryptocast with a guest, and that was we welcome back Ridgeback, and I really liked our first episode with him, but we talked about psychedelics and stuff for the first half, but then we got into cryptocurrency, and I really appreciate his view on it, and I think he definitely knows a lot more in the realm of cryptocurrency than you or I would. You agree, Stan?
Yeah, I mean, wasn't he a DoD cryptographer? I
Yeah,
think it was his occupation. So yeah, he knows a shit ton more than I do.
yeah,
And it's always refreshing getting his site though, because he can always explain it in a way that in layman's terms. You never are second guessing what he's saying because you're right there along with him.
yeah, and he can go more into the technical side of why cryptocurrency is something that people believe in so much, to where I feel like, for myself personally, I'm just going off of I'm parroting what other YouTubers or articles say. I other than working the wallets, I couldn't really tell you cryptocurrency code and stuff. So it's always good to talk to someone that understands what this stuff actually is. And then we just had a good episode here talking to him and talking about the market and how all the financial stuff going on right now in 2020 is basically a goddamn commercial for Bitcoin. So I really enjoyed this talk, and I hope you guys do too. And without further ado, Ridgeback. So yeah, Ridgeback, man, thanks for coming back on. For anyone that hadn't heard your episode before, I definitely recommend to go listen to that. We talked about in there your experience growing psilocybin mushrooms, and then we got into crypto.
Yeah.
I wanted to have you back on to talk basically just crypto and be part of our Cryptocast series. So
sure.
Thanks for coming on, and first and foremost, how are you doing with quarantined and all that? Are you I imagine, because you work in IT kind of stuff, you can just work from home, right?
Yeah, so a couple stories on that. On the quarantine, working from home, it's been great. My company has always been kind of resistant to working from home, and now we have to. And now, my whole company is working from home, and we're doing fantastic work for the customer. Customer is super, super happy for us. It's just, I don't know. I like being at home. I don't like fighting traffic, and I really enjoy being around my dogs and my girlfriend and just being around the house and stuff and doing work. So I'm really happy with that. And for this COVID thing, I saw early on in early February, this thing starting to present itself in China, and it started coming to America. And I started kind of noticing a little bit of the details of, people are paying attention to this a little bit more than just the seasonal flu. I lived in Australia during the SARS epidemic and kind of saw some of it there. I was in Africa during an Ebola outbreak. We've all lived through MERS. MERS was a Middle Eastern one, and I was the DoD contractor at the time and lived through that. So I've seen this before. And just before people started to pay attention in the news, I started buying food and water purification supplies. And
Nice.
About a week or 2 weeks, and my girlfriend and some other friends thought I was being kind of weird and silly. And look at us now. We can't even buy toilet paper. I have pictures of shelves at Walmart where the meat section's empty. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of that's recovered, but I don't consider myself a prepper, but a couple weeks worth of that really made me feel confident in our situation. So we didn't have to panic. We didn't have to rush out to the stores. We didn't have to go do anything. I just told my girlfriend, hey, let's just hang out. Let the first wave of the panic, let those people fight over food. Let them deal with it. We'll be fine for. I probably have 3 months worth of food, so we're good. But yeah, it's a really fascinating part of American history or world history now. I mean, it's if you're old enough, you've lived through 9/11 and now this, and very, very interesting times we live in. And we're learning more and more things about international trade, money. Obviously this, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin, but it aligns with these things and how it affects the government and so forth. And very, very interesting times. How are you guys handling it?
I'm good personally. I mean, I'm on the same boat as you, kind of, where IT work's easily done remotely, and I do my business out of my apartment. So
perfect.
It's been easy. It hasn't been much of a transition other than my girlfriend being home more, but that's never a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's been fine, and
good.
And I actually wanted to highlight what you said earlier about your company now kind of being hesitant about making the move, to remote work. And that's something me and Ruben talked about last night, actually, is just this is forcing people to look into that option and see that it's economically beneficial and probably production-wise beneficial for the company.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to pay for buildings and electricity and air conditioning and all that sort of stuff. And I could see this being a giant turning point in a lot of businesses because I don't think this is going to dissipate anytime soon. So business continuity is going to shift and just work from home normally for quite a while. And the transition back to the building, that may, that's going to be slow. It's going to be phased in. My employer already said, when that happens, it's going to be 1 day a week and then 2 days a week and then 3 days a week, as a saying, as we get past the curve on the outbreak. So I think a lot of businesses, when they start looking at the numbers, they might realize, well, we're saving a lot of money here, not having a bunch of lights on all day.
Yeah. It's like it was a forced trial run right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. And all the Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all these big platforms that all these companies used before and now everyone has to use are getting stress tested and really worked over really well, and they're surviving, they're working. So that's awesome. I'm really kind of excited for how the internet and this type of work is going to be presented in the future because of the situation we're in now. Too bad it was a deadly situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And not just some happy nuance, but that's what we that's what that's kind of how the cookie crumbles. We tend to have a catastrophe every 10, 20, 30 years, right? And my dad is old enough to have lived through Pearl Harbor and everything since then. And to him, he just wakes up and plays his video games. To him, this is just another one of those things. So, I looked at his baby book, and it was his second or third birthday, which would have been like 1943 or so. And in there, it states that they couldn't even bake him a birthday cake because they weren't allowed enough sugars in their sugar ration during World War II. And, here we are almost rationing food in a way. If you go if you go to your supermarket, they'll probably only give you 1 or 2 packs of meat. I know in one of the supermarkets I go to, they only, you can only walk out with 2 packs of meat, and you can only walk out with 1 packet of toilet paper and 1 packet of paper towels. And, we did this 60, 80 years ago before. So we've been through this before. So my dad just thinks it's just kind of normal. I talked to him about it. He's like, he's oblivious. It doesn't even faze him. So a little bit of his strength goes a long way for keeping me from, having any issues with it.
Mm-hmm. How are you doing, Ruben, though?
Oh, I'm doing great. I mean, honestly, my lifestyle hasn't changed except that I don't have band practice on Wednesday nights and I don't have to like take my kids to their stuff at night. But other than that, I realize I'm pretty socially distant and, have most of my friendships are virtual friendships online anyway. But, other than that, like it's been, it's been really good for like my family, like not having anything to do has been really good for us. I think the fact that I'm still getting out and going to work helps. If I was at home, maybe we'd be killing each other by now, but it's like I work 4/10, so I have 3-day weekends. And like today we like went and had a picnic, like in the middle of the woods, like in this spot that I go to and stuff, but in this park by our house. And, then like went and like, it was like peak wildflower, like right now. So we were like going through and I was showing my kids all the different wildflowers we could find and, stuff like that it's like, normally we wouldn't be able to do that on a Friday afternoon, So, just trying to take advantage of that. I'm really grateful of like the kind of like neighborhood I live in and like our neighbors who our kids are friends. Like they're not leaving their house really at all. Like my neighbor's working from home and, they're not being all freaked out about being around each other. Like we kind of like see eye to eye about what's going on and everything. And, so we kind of have them to hang out with, and the kids are all playing and, just kind of, it's good. It just kind of feels like everyone's on vacation and we just can't go anywhere, almost. So I'm really grateful for that situation, but I'm really aware of how tough it is for other people and like, how tough it's going to be on the economy, which, to switch it to crypto, it's like, just like you were saying about like, kind of like the prepper mindset of like getting food and knowing what to get and how long stuff can keep and not going to the store in a panic. Like I kind of have had that knowledge for a while. Like, I'm just, I don't know, for a while I thought, we were going to either have a nuclear war or a zombie holocaust or whatever, like I thought there was always going to be these kinds of things. And I already had kind of a prepper mindset. And I think that's kind of what led me into the culture of crypto, maybe not the understanding of the financial stuff, but really the like, the anarcho-capitalist kind of crowd of crypto that like all the things that they've been saying for years about the fragility of like the fiat banking system and central banking, kind of cartels and all of that really at this time seems to be really coming true. And it's like, I kind of feel like that same like satisfaction of like, oh, I'm glad I did that you had when you were getting food before everyone was panicking. I kind of have that feeling with being a Bitcoin holder right now. Like, and I don't care about the price. Like I know people are like, see, it crashed too with the market, but what they don't bring up is like, and then in like a week it doubled from that bottom, so it's like the stocks have not doubled since the same crash that took everything else down. So like, how do you feel? Well, we can get into a deeper discussion about, I guess, the Fed and fiat system, but let's just talk about the market right now. How do you feel about the Bitcoin market? Like, cause to me, like people keep asking me, and this is why I know that it's like going to take off again at some point soon. People are people are like, hey, how do I get Bitcoin again? But it feels to me, I keep telling people like, start getting ready to buy it, but it feels to me like we're going to go down again. Do you kind of feel that, or how do you feel? I know the halving's coming up, and so it's like, what's that going to do?
Yeah. So market dynamics in terms of whether it's going to go up or down, I really wish I knew. It's so difficult to predict. it's just, I don't have a good feeling really whether it's going to go up or down. One thing that I have a huge just positive outlook on Bitcoin is Bitcoin did follow the trend of the stock market during the COVID panic, and it did go down. I think that's because there were a lot of Wall Street people who did have a lot of money in crypto, decided to dump a lot of that crypto in order to pay for their margin calls and liquidity crunch and so forth on their end. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that your average investor has billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in crypto. I think, most of the people are less than $1,000, I would guess. There's a lot of small wallets out there. But crypto Bitcoin bounced back as a free market. It didn't need quantitative easing. It didn't need the president to say the economy is going to get better. It didn't need anything. It's a pure, true, free market, and it recovered on its own. That, to me, when I watched the chart recover, I went, okay, all right. It doesn't need a central bank. It doesn't need bailouts. It doesn't need anything. And it bounced. Yes, no problem. It stabilized and it started climbing back up again. No big deal. And I love that about it. If you look at the stock market right now, it's all over the place. The airline stocks are just, bad term. They crash. I mean, they're just, they're just, it's just gone. I mean, it's just, all that money people put into their 401ks and their investment accounts. It's massive depletion in that. It's all based on a house of cards. So, but crypto, Bitcoin in particular, was born in 2008 when the United States decided to perform their first quantitative easing. And now we're in our sixth quantitative easing. And once again, Bitcoin is holding strong and climbing back up. And it's a really interesting time to see those market dynamics. Anytime you look at a chart, like a crypto chart or American Airlines or whatever, it's really a chart of human psychology. It's the panic, fear versus greed and optimist outlook. And humans are irrational, big time. If it was a computer making the decisions, the markets wouldn't have done anything. It's purely human speculation. And looking at the stock market going down, there's not very much optimism. But if you look at crypto going up, there's a lot more optimism there as compared to the rest of the stock market. And you're right about anarcho-capitalists and cryptoists and so forth. They do not have a good feeling for the US dollar or any other major currency, because not only did America fire off a quantitative easing for a couple $1 trillion, several other major banks, including China and the UK and so forth. I think I counted about 8 major banks around the world did the same thing, Japan, and they did almost about $1.5 to $2 trillion as well in equivalent USD. So globally, these currencies are being inflated or in monetary base all over the place. And I'm not a economist, so I don't know how that's really going to play out. Historically, quantitative easing hasn't caused that much of a problem in terms of damage to the market, but what it does, it damages the dollar. It damages the base of the dollar. So what you have is more and more money being printed by a giant printer somewhere, or a bunch of IOUs being printed, and there's no gold backing it. There's nothing other than the U.S. government saying, hey, it's good. That's it. And I don't know when we're going to hit that point at which you can't do that anymore. And when we do hit that point at which you can't do that anymore, all I could think would be a collapse. And if you look at the amount of securities the federal government owns, they had $2.5 trillion in March, and now at that was at the beginning of March. Now they're at 3.3 trillion. Almost $1 trillion in gain, which is almost 50% increase in the amount of securities they hold in their bank vaults, and that is just a crazy amount of money and IOUs in the Treasury Department. And I don't know what's going to happen, or not Treasury Department, but in the Fed. I don't know what's going to happen when that hits a limit that they can't handle, or you just run out of treasuries to buy from banks. So quantitative easing is used for to print money in order to create IOUs for banks, smaller banks, to lend against. And it's free money that goes down to them. They use that to buy securities for mortgages and so forth. And at the moment, the COVID is causing people to lose their jobs, and they're not able to pay their mortgage. And the QE causes, or part of the mechanism of QE is to buy these mortgages. Well, if these mortgages default, then the QE is no longer backed by the mortgages that they bought. So I'm hoping that whoever is monitoring this is paying very close attention to the number of foreclosures in the market and so forth, because it's, if all those mortgage-backed securities disappear, then the value of the QE goes to zero, and now you have no money, and you just printed money, you have no money, and now that value is zero. So that could get pretty, that could cause a pretty nasty death spiral.
Yeah, I mean, that's where banks get their liquidity. Mm-hmm. It's like, the Federal Reserve can make as many fake monopoly dollars as they want and send them to them in a, wire transfer, and then they buy their stock, like you were saying. But the actual capital, the actual reserve that's in banks comes from people paying their mortgages. It comes from people working and then depositing money into, the bank or whatever for their mortgage payment. That's where the capital comes from. Other than that, the rest of the money that a bank deals with is all made up fiat money that is not backed in anything, which is like, I try to point that out when people are like, Bitcoin's not backed by anything. And it's like, the people that say that are ones that think that the US dollar is still backed by gold. And it's not. And Bitcoin is backed by that work itself in the mining instead of, the banks and the stock market are backed by the amount that the people that are working put into the system. And the problem is that they've inflated it so much with all this fake money that they keep doing that the real money is not there. The consumer purchasing and the mortgage payments make up so much less than what the economy is valued at by the value of stocks. And, and that's one reason that we crashed, obviously, because of the panic. But I think there's going to be a situation in the stock market where you can't, like, take a WeWork, for instance. Do you know that company?
Yeah. The co-working space.
Yeah. It's like a startup kind of, basically. I think it's a couple years old or whatever, but they have a great idea, and they had a lot of investors buy into that idea, and they bought a lot of very high valued real estate. But other than that, as a company, they have operated at an extreme loss since their entire existence. But they were like the hottest stock of this last bull run. But they're a totally fake company that is just a shitty company that is not profitable. They just sit on a lot of real estate, which gives them a high valuation. So I think they crashed pretty hard. And it's stuff like that I don't think is going to really ever come back. I think the stock market is really going to be consumer based, and like it's not about your stock price, it's about your earnings statements, and that's what's going to value companies more. Like that's what they were supposed to be, but we got so far away from that because of how much fake money the Fed put into the system. And crypto follows that same thing and that same psychology, where it's like how many altcoins have gone on these crazy runs, and it was just based on hype and rumors and I hope that crypto will come out of these hard times being like, okay, these networks have to have actual traffic, and that's how we're going to value them, and they have to have new things coming out and new, features and wallets, and they have to be able to scale, and like that stuff's going to start mattering for crypto, I feel like.
Correct. And, even though we're in the midst of the COVID and the stock market crash and all that crazy stuff, Bitcoin Core, the main protocol, they're still writing it. They're still kicking out updates. They had an update released here recently. So development on the protocol is still ongoing. Bugs are being fixed. No one stopped working on that. The Lightning Network, which is the layer 2 network on top of Bitcoin, still going strong. Nodes are being added. More developments being pushed. I monitor some of the Twitter feeds of some of the developers, and they're like, hey, look at this, and they're always showing new features. When was the last time we saw a new feature in the US dollar? Never. Not in our lifetime. And now we're making programmable money that can do more and more things, and it's not going away. And I really think that due to this COVID and stock market issue, the crypto people out there are going to really push this a little bit more into the thoughts and minds of people who have not considered it before, because crypto definitely did not go away, and it's holding strong. And I looked at the hashing power on the Bitcoin network, and it's still climbing. It's still, people are still throwing computers at it. Now, it did take a little bit of a dip right along with the stock market. I think people were probably shutting off computers and freaking out for a minute. So we had a little bit of a dip, and then it climbed right back up, and it's still twice as high as it was 12 months ago. Yeah. And it is just going crazy.
Could you explain the hashing that you just mentioned?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Sorry. Yeah, that's the when they call it Bitcoin mining. So it's just a computer puzzle that these computers have to expend a lot of electricity on in order to solve. And when they solve it, they get X amount of Bitcoin. And when you lump all that computing power together globally, they can crack the puzzle like trillions amounts of time. It's called exa hashes, and exa is like 2 to the 20th power or some crazy thing like that. It's huge. It's the largest supercomputer in the world. It is insanely powerful. And when more computers are added, the hash rate increases and the difficulty increases. And the reason why that difficulty tracks the hashing power is because you don't want too many Bitcoins produced. You want the emission rate to be stable and standard at a certain rate every block that is calculated. So unlike quantitative easing, where they just decide to print $1 trillion, you can't print all the Bitcoins right now. They're only emitted X amount of Bitcoin every so often on a very well-known basis, and we know almost down to the minute when the last Bitcoin will be mined, and that'll be in 100 years from now or so. And we're reaching this thing called the halving very soon. It's in May, and what that means is the hashing rate has created enough Bitcoins that the amount of Bitcoin that is emitted will be cut in half. So the same amount of work will create half as many Bitcoin. So think of it in like mining gold. The deeper you get into the Earth's core, you get less and less and less gold, right? So, and I don't know if that's true or not. It's just a theory. So let's say a mile down in the Earth's core, you get 100 tons of gold. Well, 2 miles down, you're going to get 50. And then 4 miles down, you're going to get 25, and just halves all the way down. So this halving is going to cut the amount of Bitcoins earned by miners by half. And that causes some really, really interesting market dynamics, because miners make money by selling their Bitcoin. Well, if they're going to lose half their money, they will lose their incentive to mine, right? So what happens is miners will fall off the network. And when all of these miners start falling off the network, the difficulty goes down. The Bitcoin network automatically detects this worldwide, and they reduce the difficulty so that people with cheaper hardware, cheaper electricity can compete for those Bitcoin. And once those cheaper computers and so forth come back online, the difficulty will start rising back up again. And the network constantly stabilizes itself with the amount of computers that are on it, trying to solve the puzzle. And it forces all sorts of interesting aspects. It forces people to build more efficient hardware, mining hardware. It forces people to search for and find cheaper electricity, or maybe use solar power or wind power or hydroelectric power, renewable sources, and so forth. It forces people to write code that's more efficient, because more efficient code uses less electricity. It's just an overall good thing for the network and for global power usage and economy. I know there's a lot of criticism on how much power Bitcoin uses to mine, but I think vast majority of that is renewable energy. A lot of it's done in China, and they get a lot of cheap, free electricity from hydroelectric dams and so forth, which kind of have their own issues ecologically, though. But I do look forward to the halving, because some people believe the Bitcoin price will spike. I think there's going to be a huge sell-off, so the price might dip heavily, and then it will spike. I think the miners are going to dump what they have. They're probably going to dump their equipment. The price is going to drop, and then it's going to bounce really, really, really hard straight up in the air. So that might be a good timing to buy, because the network is not going away. And I think it'll be even stronger after the halving. And we've had several other halvings, and after every halving has always been a gain. So I don't see why this wouldn't happen again. And Bitcoin has such a strange correlation with weird events. It was born on the first QE, and now it's about to have its latest halving just after the latest QE, quantitative easing, and everyone's expecting this time to be the halving of all halvings, to just boom. So there's a very, very high probability, in my estimate, that this thing could skyrocket and take over, because we don't know what's going to happen with the stock market by the time May comes around. That's only a month away, a month and a half away. And the stock market may not recover at all, and people are going to start looking for investments. And if Bitcoin's starting to climb, and it is climbing right now, everyone in the world could be jumping on that. Coinbase announced that their number of buying versus selling has increased on the buying side 7%. That was just a couple of days ago. So people are increasing. 7% is a pretty big jump. And right now they're at 67% of their customers are buying, and the remainder are selling. So that's got to tell you something about all that.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people when they're asking, like, should I buy Bitcoin right now? Like, I'm starting to see stuff about it. It seems like it's a good price, but is it, and blah blah blah. And I've been telling people, I'm like, personally, do I feel like you're going to get a chance to get it cheaper than it is right now? Yes, but even right now at 7,000, let's say, or 6,800, whatever it is right now, that's still look like this time last year it's up, and then 6 months ago it was up even more than it is now. So it's like it's a good level to buy right now for sure. I do think I agree with what you said about that there will be a quick sell off after the halving. Just miners that like the reduction in the reward is going to hurt their overhead to the point that they're going to pack it in and liquidate their miners. And that is going to happen. And they're going to mine right up until that point and then liquidate.
Exactly.
And if you look at the historical, like long-term trend with every halving, like it seems to be that the run up after a halving, there's lag time. And it's probably because of that. Like every time there's a certain amount of miners that turn off and pack it in. And so I expect that to happen. And that's what I tell people is like, buy it now. So in case I'm wrong about that idea and it does just take off. Okay, well, you bought it. But if it goes lower, we'll buy it again and buy more that time, and like, I'm glad people are noticing, like, maybe all this shit the Fed is doing is bad. Maybe, having 30% unemployment is going to have more lingering effects than just a month, like they're saying, and people are starting to lose faith in that dollar. And then if you look at the whole global scenario, look at the EU. Like the EU looks shakier than the United States dollar right now.
Absolutely.
Just on the take Italy for example, with the they have the worst case scenario going on with COVID, and they are like suspending all mortgage payments and all fees and all. Their banking system will have no capital coming in for 3 months.
At least.
And so like they're going to have to turn around, and that's all going to shake out to the euro, and every other country is going to have to bear that burden when they already just had Brexit, which was a huge burden on them. They're already shaky. And one of the most recent stories that I saw like this week, the Minister of Finance for Germany killed himself.
Oh, right. I heard about that.
So like, does that sound like someone who is in charge of the economy of one of the strongest countries in the world and basically the leader of the EU? If the global crisis that's going on with fiat money was going to go away in a couple months, would a guy in that position kill himself? It's obviously a little more dire than our government might be saying, and for that, it's like, I don't care what the price of Bitcoin is right now. I want as much of it as I can get, and that's the only reason I look at like the price going down. Good. I can get more, cause I dollar cost average, and I have a, a portion of my check and stuff that like, it doesn't fucking matter. Like I consider my paycheck a portion of that's Bitcoin. I just have to go through the fees and loops to convert it. But I almost at this point, I have so little faith in the US dollar because of what's going on with the central banks that I look at the market value of Bitcoin is more of a representation of the value of the US dollar than it is of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's value has not changed to me at all. It's the dollar value that's fluctuating,
Exactly. And although this is kind of a strange statement in terms of fiat, the dirty money, stores aren't accepting fiat right now because who wants to catch coronavirus, right? So essentially all of America is now on a digital currency. If you don't have a credit card, I don't know how you're ordering food and having it delivered to you. You could certainly do that with Bitcoin. A roundabout way would be to use like purse.io and use Bitcoin to buy credit card, gift cards for Amazon and so forth. But yeah, you're not going to walk up to most stores and use fiat right now. They're not accepting cash all over the place. Some places are, but most places are not. I know in the town I live in, they won't accept cash. So, and we're all working from home, if you're not using credit, what are you going to use? And this might start pushing people more towards understanding that crypto is perfect for scenarios like this. Just recently, I don't know if you heard that there was a bill put in just a few weeks ago. Part of that bill had a digital US dollar in it, and they yanked it out just as that bill was being passed around. And I went, oh, really? So a digital dollar is just a very thin veiled copy of a cryptocurrency. It is a unit of account, and they're just trying to get a little bit of a bandwagon on that, I think.
Well, and it was interesting. So, there was actually a lot of framework in the bill about it. It wasn't just like, how about we have a digital dollar? Like they actually very well thought it out. And there's a situation going on where, obviously the virus is a danger to people. And like, we're getting to the levels where like people know people that are sick. And, I know like some, my dad's, cousin, I think, died of it. And like someone they know from our hometown, and it's getting real, and I understand that. But I really think, and not to get conspiracy theory, like I'm not saying that the government planned this, but they're definitely using this moment to do some things that they want to do for a long time. And mainly, I really think there's a battle going on between the Treasury Department and the Fed. And the digital dollar, the way they had it framed up. And what's interesting too, I don't know if you saw this, that right before that bill was written, one of the head dudes from Coinbase was hired by the Treasury Department to oversee banks and to establish a digital currency system. And then they put this bill in there. And the bill basically bypassed the Fed. These were treasury notes, digital treasury notes, not issued by the Fed, but that there would be a separate balance sheet, that wasn't part of the Fed's balance sheet. And then that got yanked out. So I think that's what's going on, is there's this battle between, trying to get back to sound money, what that would be backed in. I don't know, but I do think that, whether it's Trump or Mnuchin or other people behind the scenes, that's kind of going on. And while everyone's out of work, while, crazy stuff is going on, there's 0% interest rates and all these crazy stuff's going on.
Crazy.
People wouldn't notice if all of a sudden the money that they had was backed by the Treasury Department instead of the Fed. Nobody gives a shit. They just need money because they don't have a job,
Exactly. Yeah. I could see there are individuals in the U.S. government who are very anti-Fed, and they want to do their part in trying to yank a lot of the U.S. dollars, a lot of the control of the U.S. dollar away from the Fed, and because the Fed is not federal at all, and those are the type of. I'd like to know who some of those senators and congressmen and representatives are, because I would vote for them probably. Make sure they stay in office and not vote for the people who yanked it out, because they probably have, their pockets lined by the Fed. I think the Fed is probably always on the defensive in terms of they're always looking out for themselves and want to maintain control of the dollar at all times. And I bet there's people who are against that, like me and yourself and whomever, especially crypto people. Basically we just want a fair dollar and not a dollar that just gets generated out of thin air and so forth. And
we want,
much more free market.
Yeah. Crypto people want scarcity. And, I don't think it's such a hard concept. I never thought about it until I started reading, a deep dive into crypto. And so I think, you touched on it before about, that like places aren't accepting cash. It's like, crypto's getting to the point where it's just as easy to use. If you can, as Venmo or PayPal or all these other things that are digital dollars already,
right?
And
exactly.
if the Treasury Department's going to create a digital dollar, like it's already in that environment,
right?
And people would be used to it. But then once they start getting used to the digital magical internet money, instead of like looking at Bitcoin like that, now everything's magical internet money. Bitcoin being scarce is going to be more appealing once people get over that digital hump.
Right.
The idea of Bitcoin is going to be like, oh, well, this shit's, my federal digital dollar account never goes up, but Bitcoin, my friend's Bitcoin account, it goes up and down, but it goes up, and so it's like, they're going to start looking into that and why, and they'll realize it's because it's backed. It is backed in something. Like that's there's a lot of criticism of Bitcoin that I can be like, yeah, I get it, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not backed by anything. It's like, it's backed by more than anything, any other currency there is. And, and on top of that, it's scarce. There's no gold is the only other thing that can be a currency that's scarce,
And with crypto, you hold the crypto. It is physically yours, and it can't be taken from you. So if you have a digital dollar, it's going to be in a digital bank somewhere, and they can just pull it from you.
Track every purchase you have. Yeah,
absolutely. They would love that. And Bitcoin is not anonymous at all, and you can track that. I've written code to do that. It's not that hard to track, but there's privacy things being added to Bitcoin, and in a few years it'll be completely silent, but or completely dark. But there have been banks in Europe who have gone to negative interest rates, which means you have your euro in this bank, and every month they take money out of your account instead of interest going in. And they do that as a monetary policy in order to force people to pull their money out and then throw it into the economy. And now imagine your digital dollar and the government goes, we need a little bit more. And they just take it. My parents are a generation where they still have cash at home because they know it's hard to confiscate and it's easy to move. But it gets to the point where a cashless society is forced upon you, like it is in some European countries. Cashless society is king, and we'll eventually have two digital cashless avenues: the digital dollar and Bitcoin. And I'm going to put my bet that Bitcoin will survive apocalypses and downturns and so forth, like the one we're in right now, and much better than digital dollar. And people will move to Bitcoin in order to hold their money. In other words, they can retain their money, whereas a digital dollar, you don't know what they're going to do with it. They could negative interest rate you. They could take fees out of it. They could do what they did in, was it Greece a few years ago? And they just said anyone with more than so many krona or whatever they have in there, they just took it.
Yeah.
Like all the rich people in Greece, they just became poor instantly. They just took all their money. It's like, holy cow, that is insane to think that happened. And U.S. Treasuries, the 1 month and the 3 month hit negative interest rates a few weeks ago, just for a minute. And that's crazy to think. So we have seen negative interest rates in America very recently. And the Fed is at zero interest rate now. You can't get any lower than that unless you're going to go into negative interest rate. So it's going to get very, very interesting. And another nuance is they just relaxed the capital requirements on banks. So a bank has to have so much real tangible assets in their bank. I think it's like 10% of the total amount of money that people have in there. And they just relaxed those capital requirements just a few days ago. So banks don't have to have all that extra backing. So now you have less backing for your money at a bank.
Mm-hmm.
And that can get, in my mind, pretty scary, because they had an ATM run in New York a few weeks ago where people were running to the ATMs and started pulling $100 bills out, and the ATMs ran out of hundreds, and there were people in line trying to pull their money out. The bank had to do an emergency pull of money and redo the ATMs and start putting limits. And I'm thinking, if this thing starts going on longer and longer and the stock market keeps going down and down and down, people are going to start pulling their money out of the ATMs. We're going to start seeing some Venezuela style inflation, and where capital controls, what the government says, you can only pull $100 a day. Well, if you can only pull $100 a day, everyone's going to be pulling $100 a day. And now it's super panic. Once the government starts putting limits like that. I mean, early on, there were rumors that Trump was going to shut down the stock market. And, if they did, guess who's still chugging along just fine? Bitcoin.
Yeah.
24/7, it is on no matter what. And it's not shutting down anytime soon. So, there's no guy with a master switch that can just take it down. The only thing that I think would cause an issue with Bitcoin is if globally electricity went down, but I just don't see that as a threat vector.
Well, if that happens, and people say that too, but if that happens, my money's the last thing I'm fucking worried.
Exactly.
At that point,
I'm trading bullets.
Yeah, at that point, booze and bullets and weed become the currency, and
absolutely,
but I think to expand on what you were talking about with like bank runs, I do think that's been another thing. Like when I've had arguments with people about Bitcoin, and I've been like, dude, I like knowing I'm in charge of my money. If my Bitcoin gets stolen or lost, that's my fault. That was either a lazy like losing something, or a lazy internet security protocol, a personal protocol with passwords and virus protection and all that stuff. And also, nobody can confiscate it. What happens if we go on for 6 months with 30% unemployment, and right now, credit cards are saying, "Oh, we'll work with you on the payments and whatever."
Right.
That's not going to last long. Eventually, they're going to be like, "Oh, sorry, fuck you, pay me."
Exactly.
Oh, okay. You don't want to pay me? All right, I'm taking it out of your savings. I'm confiscating your, and they can can do all that.
Yeah.
They can't take your Bitcoin. You can go completely fucking bankrupt and delinquent. They can't take your Bitcoin. So for people in that situation, it's like, that's a good store of value right there. Store of value doesn't mean that the price is going to stay the same or that the value is going to stay. It's that it's secure and nobody's going to fucking take it unless you want them to, or let them,
Exactly.
And then on top of that, the bank run, people are always like, dude, the banks are safe or whatever. Today, the first bank, because of that zero reserve banking that you said, that they don't have to have, they can be super risky with what they lend out and whatever. They don't have to back anyone's account. Well, actually, on Monday or maybe late last week, the FDIC, which is the group that insures, that's the fund that insures people's bank accounts in the United States, their Twitter account, which I didn't even know they had a Twitter account, but they put out this video with their chairman basically saying, like, the banks are safe. There's no reason to pull your money out of the banks. We're fine. And what was funny is, like, I've never seen this woman talk before or whatever, but she messed up a couple times and they didn't redo it. Like, it was like this rushed video with like flubs in it, and it was like, that video scared me. That made me want to go to the bank. I was like, what is she talking about? Why would you make this video? And so fast forward a week, and the first bank has failed. Some small bank chain in West Virginia, had a complete failure and had to be absorbed by the federal government. And so, luckily they're the only one to do that. So, most people that have an account with them or whatever, like it just gets restructured. It's not that big a deal. But imagine that chain reaction if other banks start going down and down and down and down, and then, they're going to get bought up by corporate banks, but they're going to be, they're failing too. They just have the resources to fake it. And you could have this situation where you're like, shit, I got to get the money out of my account, and they won't give it to you, and they close withdrawals, and they, the inside, you can't go into a bank because of COVID. So you're going to be on the line with people and whatever, the situation is ripe for a bank failure nationwide and worldwide. And like you said, Bitcoin's still going to be there. You're still going to be able to, use Square Cash to pay someone or, to buy something.
Absolutely.
And that's even if, all the debit cards go down, all the credit cards go down, because the banks are trying to figure out, how to make up for the fact that they've been functioning on, fake money because of the zero and fractional reserve banking.
Yeah. I am afraid for the banks. People are out of work. They're not paying their mortgages. Those mortgages are lent by banks. And if banks don't make money, they're going to go down. And I know, the QE is what's there to back up the banks and so forth, and keep them liquid and operating. And like you said, one bank has already failed. And I don't know how long the QE will offer the banks operating cash. So a couple $1 trillion, well, only a chunk of that went to the banks, right? So if that's only enough for them to operate on for a month, and this thing keeps going for another month, I mean, the CDC just extended the recommended quarantine time out to, was it 20 May?
Yeah.
So, originally it was 15 April. I mean, they just pushed it out another month. And if we don't get a hold of this thing, it could be another couple of months. And I could only imagine a second QE, one right after this one. And I don't know if a second one will help. If you look at how the markets reacted to the QE, they had a nice little couple percent bump up, and then it just right now is just slowly grinding into the ground.
Yeah.
And even some of the really interesting companies that were making good money, like Slack, the chat, their stock symbol is WORK, WORK, and for a while there they were booming because they were just loading on new clients like crazy, and then they just went into the dumpster on price. I was watching their chart quite carefully there, and just last week it just took a huge dive, and everyone else did too. And that burp of capital that came in from QE helped a bit, but now I fear it may have wore out in just a week, and I don't know what they're going to do. I think, they've already slashed the lending rate to zero. So I don't know what they can do. They may have ran out of bullets, and
it's, I just feel like everyone is so distracted because they didn't understand it in the first place, but also it's like the situation is so dire and it's so in our face that like so many people, like, they don't care. Like, I try to talk to my wife about what the Federal Reserve is doing, and she's like, I don't care.
My girlfriend
I'm
too.
trying to be work from home and homeschool while you're out walking in the woods. Like, I don't care about the Federal Reserve. So I get it. And that probably goes over for a lot of people that listen to our podcast too. Like, when we have episodes like this, they're like, oh, come on. I don't understand what the fuck quantitative easing is. But, I think, like, just, to talk to those people, like, we're just trying to hammer home the idea that, like, this is the moment Bitcoin was created for. Now, we're obviously hopeful and optimistic about it, but it is also a, like, shit or get off the pot moment for Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin has to provide stability for the next year and a half of what's about to happen to global currencies. And Bitcoin has to perform well as a network first and foremost. The network can't have any hiccups, which it hasn't since it started, so I'm not expecting that. But that free market, the fear can't lead it to a overall, just a meltdown and it gets under $1,000 and whatever, But what is your view on, like, say the new reality of Bitcoin is it stabilizes for years around less than it is now, like say $1,000, say $2,000. If it was originally supposed to be a peer-to-peer currency, wouldn't the stableness of it be more useful for that to be used to replace currency in a cashless society? Or do you think it always needs to follow market trends and psychology and always be, growing and rising in its dollar value?
So Bitcoin and Ethereum have had their lowest volatility in 3 months in their lifetime. I just read an article about that, which is really interesting. So volatility is the swinging of the price up and down. So it's actually stabilizing, I guess you could say. As far as the price, when we look at the price value, we're always comparing it to the US dollar, right? Yeah. So hardcore Bitcoiners don't compare the price. They say one Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin. So eventually one will have to price products and services in Bitcoin along with the USD and then eventually just drop the USD. So there are some online stores like Y'alls and whatnot that are Bitcoin Lightning, and they only price their items in Bitcoin. So that's what the future, I hope, will look like. One day it will just be straight up Bitcoin prices, maybe just in Satoshis. Satoshis are like the pennies of Bitcoin. And you don't see the US dollar even presented, or maybe it's just, $500 / X number of Bitcoin from there. But if we continue to compare the price swings versus the US dollar, we won't escape the US dollar, if that makes sense. In other words, we'll always be wanting to convert the Bitcoin back to US dollar, because then we can say, hey, we're rich now because I got $1 million instead of I have 25 Bitcoin. Yeah. And so that's my hope, is that the common spoken currency would be Bitcoin. I don't see that happening in the next couple of years, maybe 10 years or so, or there just becomes more of a global understanding that Bitcoin is the way to handle the world of money, and we just kind of have a dual system. It'll just be the US dollar, and it'll just be Bitcoin, and you'll just have the two markets, and they just kind of compete on their own. And some people want to play on the wild, wild west of free markets and do whatever you want on Bitcoin, and some people will be stuck in a very heavily surveilled, heavily influenced, heavily manipulated US dollar and stock market. And I play both sides. Yeah. I don't play them against each other though. I just collect Bitcoin, and then on the stock market side, I do my bets on there. I make some, I lose some, no big deal. But I think as Bitcoin stabilizes more and more and more, as the price swings against the dollar, as the volatility starts getting down, I think that will absolutely help people be more willing to use it. And I try to tell people to not buy Bitcoin for investments. I tell them just to buy it to use it. So buy it today, then immediately use it to buy something. So I know a lot of mushroom spore shops, they prefer Bitcoin because it's quasi pseudo anonymous, and that's what I would use it for too. So just buy it and use it immediately.
Yeah. Stan, didn't you just buy Kratom with crypto too?
Yeah.
Yep. And all the places that are like that always give a decent discount if you're using Bitcoin. So
Sure
it's just
do.
like it's a no brainer, especially with as you mentioned before, the ease of access to it and the ease of use of it at this point in its evolution.
Yeah. I buy Kratom too, and it's always with Bitcoin, 100% of the time. And and it works. To me, it works way better than a credit card. Just scan the QR code with your phone. Boom, a little check mark goes green. I'm done, and they mail it to me the next day. It's done. It's that simple.
Yeah,
and they're guaranteed. I'm guaranteed. It's awesome. It works great.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's gotten to the point where if you can use Venmo, if you can use Zelle, if you can use PayPal, like a Bitcoin wallet is not much different, and it's I mean, that learning curve, the digital learning curve, people should be over by now. They're like, so, and then, but you got to look at it too. Like I was going to pay the guy that mows our lawn with Venmo, and like, I think because my wife has like sent me money on there or whatever, I'm friends with her, and like you can see everything she sent and who she sent it to and how much. And
I hate that shit.
It's like, oh my God,
it's creepy.
and so Bitcoin, that's gone. It says this bunch of numbers and letters sent this much numbers to this bunch of numbers and letters. And exactly. like you said, you can get down and find IP addresses and track that down to people.
It's hard.
And then find it to a bank account. But it doesn't say Ruben paid Stan this much for sports or whatever, like
exactly. Yeah.
Like it's like it's just so much like people don't get that, but I think they will. Much like people don't understand the need for to be holding it yourself and not have a bank run or not have your money confiscated. Like they'll understand that as well too. I think people will understand the anonymity of if they go to a cashless, digital dollar system where the Fed and the Treasury can have every account of every person you gave any bit of money to. People don't want that. Even if you're just, like, even if you're not buying drugs or doing illegal stuff that, they always say that Bitcoin's for, you just don't want people knowing your business, like just for I don't, if I send my buddy, money on Venmo for, something, like, I don't want my wife to see that I paid this dude that much money or whatever. Like, even if it's just that, like, it's like, I don't like the transparency in financial transactions. And
right.
I think people will start getting onto that and being like, well, that's kind of shitty, like when you don't have a cash option, like you don't want every transaction being broadcast publicly to anybody.
Right. And that, and that's the consumer side. So if I'm a lawnmower man, right, and I negotiate rates with 10 different people and each one gets a different rate and they're all paying me with Venmo, it doesn't take an idiot, not much brain power to look at who's paying me and, hey, why did he get a cheaper rate than I did?
Yeah.
And with Bitcoin, I can invoice someone independently, any rate, whatever, all my different clients, and for the exact same service, and some get it cheaper, some get it expensive.
Yeah.
No big deal. And I do tutoring for a friend of mine's son, computer science and hacking and just fun stuff like that. He's really interested in it, and they pay me in Bitcoin, actually, just in little like 4-class bricks of Bitcoin. And, I teach 4 classes and I go, hey, I'm ready for, if he wants 4 more classes, then pay me, a little bit more, and boom, he does. And it basically just dollar cost averages across those classes. Anytime the kid wants to learn some, I'm like, all right, there you go. And he just zaps it over to me and I just see it instantly. Yeah. And as a vendor, I don't have to worry about chargebacks or fees. Anyone can, if you want to be a jerk, you can buy some expensive stuff online, have it sent to you with a credit card, and then call your bank and say, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And there are people who do that. And Bitcoin, it's not. Once you spent it, it's gone. You can't get it back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can lead to there are some valid criticisms. If you're a vendor and someone comes in, they buy something for, say, 1 Bitcoin, which let's just say it's $10,000 worth of stuff. So it's 1 Bitcoin. And they come back within the return time, say 29 days later, and they go, hey, this just isn't working for me. I want a return policy. And the price of Bitcoin is now like $5. I mean, how do you equate that return value back, the swap back? So I don't really know how that works or how other companies have looked into that.
It's
kind of tricky.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I don't see in the future Bitcoin replacing the dollar. I just see it being a alternative that becomes more and more appealing all the time. And that's what's going to spur adoption is people are going to get scared into it this time, but then it's also going to just look more appealing during the recovery, of the next couple of years. And I think that in a retail situation where you would be returning something, I don't know if Bitcoin is the best option because of that, permanence of it. I think it's more a payment for goods and services like computer lessons or, a case of raw milk or, whatever, like whatever people that are just doing stuff that the tax man doesn't need to be involved or whatever. It's a bartering chip, basically, for goods and services. And I think that would be like, for me personally, I was supposed to take my certified arborist test on Tuesday, but it got canceled, obviously, because the testing center's closed for a month. But at some point I want to be able to offer arborist services, and I'm totally going to give a discount if you pay in crypto. And that it's like perfect for people like that are sole proprietors of some sort of LLC or whatever, to have especially if you're giving a discount, you give that discount because if you hold on to it and you don't need to liquidate that capital right away, like you might end up getting paid double what you did for whatever you did down the road. I think that'll just be more and more of its use. I think people are still going to be shopping with credit cards and cash, but but it's like, I think Bitcoin will just be like the preferred method to get paid from, like if you're a food truck, like it'd be a great thing if you're a food, stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've started several businesses in my life, and most of them, not that they failed, they just kind of fizzle out or whatnot. And, at one time I owned a photography business and so forth. But, every time I start a business, I have to take my LLC paperwork down to a bank and sit in their chair for 2 hours while they set up a bank account. And this person has me fill out a bunch of forms, and they go through my LLC paperwork, and they look at me and I look at them, and we look at each other and we think about stuff. And then they tell me, well, this is the limits of your account. This is what you can do with it. Here's a book, read this book and all the fine print and all the details. And for this little tutoring business, all I said was, hey, this is what I can do. And here's my QR code. I'm done. That's it. That was the entire business built in literally like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't have to get anyone's permission. I don't have to form anything. I don't have to sign anything. I'm just there. I'm just here's my QR code. Shoot me some Bitcoin. I'm done. And I love that. To me, instant scale, and any kid in the middle of the Australian outback, some Aborigine kid with a cell phone. And I used to live in that outback, so I know exactly what they have there. Like a kid there with barely any education, with a cell phone, can fire up an instant business with his little Bitcoin wallet that he gets for free because he downloads it.
Yeah.
And maybe he does like a dot painting or a didgeridoo music video, puts it on YouTube, people pay him, and boom, he makes like $20, or
Yeah.
well, 0.002 Bitcoin, and and here he is. He's an entrepreneur now, and that's what I like about it. Yeah. That's the part I think is going to kick off. I also think that the microservices, which is a term relating to all the weird little things that go on in the background of the internet that's not human, all these computers talking to each other, all these application programmer interfaces, APIs talking to each other. I think they're going to have payment channels built in one day. So when your car is dialing back to Honda or whatever, your car is going to pay billions of some currency for weather updates, or for high precision navigation, or for details about maybe it's updates to the car, or maybe the other way around. Maybe Honda or Ford or whatever pays your car in little transactions, going, hey, thanks for the information, thanks for your location data, we're going to sell that, that type of thing. I think that transaction, I think your tires are going to be their own autonomous businesses, and I think the alternator is going to be its own little business, and I think all these things are going to have a little tiny payment channel built in, and you're going to see that explode.
Yeah. That's the Internet of Things, right? Or IoT, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And,
that's going to
be awesome.
Yeah, that's one rabbit hole with blockchain that it's like, I don't understand it, but the amount of like money that's being thrown into developing it from companies, like you were saying, like car companies, to I've seen there's several like research and development contracts with the Department of Defense and military to develop blockchain Internet of Things. And so it's just, the future is just so bright for crypto, and it's like, from a personal standpoint to an infrastructure standpoint, this is the moment now when everything is thrown up in the air because of this virus, and everything we don't know where the cards are going to lay when it comes back. And it seems to be a lot of people want and think it'll go back to normal, but there's just so much with the financial and global situation that it's like, I don't think it can go back to normal, and especially not right away. That our financial troubles coming out of this virus will linger longer than our troubles with the virus. And so, we've talked about in the last several episodes that this is an opportunity, and whether it's an investment opportunity, whether it's a personal, financial security opportunity, or whether it's a business or an entrepreneurial opportunity, like we were talking about, this opportunity exists with crypto and blockchain, and especially Bitcoin. And that's why, like, we wanted to have you on to talk about that.
For sure.
So, I know you said you had some notes. Is there anything else you wanted to cover about Bitcoin and crypto?
It's not Bitcoin related, but it does have to do with encryption, and Bitcoin uses a lot of encryption. And there's this bill called the Earn It bill, and there's a lot of people who believe that this bill is being slipped in during the COVID crisis while people aren't paying attention. And what it is there's this thing called Section 230, and that allows companies to not be liable for content that users post. So here's Mark Zuckerberg. He owns Facebook, right? And some user joins Facebook and posts some illegal content that we all agree that's not a good thing to have, right? Well, that keeps Mark Zuckerberg out of prison. That keeps Facebook operating, because Section 230, in their defense, it's very hard for them to filter every image that comes in, 1 billion images a day. And they do have filtering and so forth. But that also goes for your ISP. If you're a criminal doing criminal acts over the internet, well, your internet service provider, Comcast or whatever it is, isn't going to be shut down by the government and taken away because they transferred illegal content over their networks. Well, the Earn It bill unwinds that. And what the Earn It bill does is it compels a service provider to earn their Section 230 status, and the methodologies to earn the Section 230 status requires or may require a company to weaken crypto, weaken their encryption so that they can monitor what's going on their services and in a much deeper, more intrusive level. And if they can get this thing in, then there could be threats towards companies who use encrypted money, right? So if a big business, say a bank wants to join in the crypto world, there have been banks. Fidelity is one of them. They actually mined Bitcoin at one time. You can have your Coinbase accounts actually displayed on Fidelity's app, which is really wild to see that. So they're actually Bitcoin friendly. And let's say they want to get really all up into Bitcoin. Well, if the Earn It Act comes in and they cannot get Section 230 status, if they can't earn it, then they may consider Bitcoin a threat to their operating status, and they may have to cut it or whatever. I don't know if it's really going to extend that way. That's just me being a kind of a fear monger. My background is encryption. I was trained in the military in encryption. And so I see anything that threatens encryption is very, very suspicious. And so I am worried about that. So there are change.org petitions out there. Just Google Earn It bill, change.org petition. If you don't want the Earn It bill, sign the petition to have the White House look at it. I think it needs like 150,000 signatures or so.
Yeah.
So definitely do that, because we don't want companies forcing weak encryption. So I work in cybersecurity, and one of my tasks is to actually analyze encryption on websites and so forth. And anytime my customers' services are running weak encryption, sometimes they put up a web server or whatever that runs an older version of transport layer security or whatever, or a weak encryption algorithm. I detect that and I tell them, hey, you need to shut it down and fix it. And they do that, no problem. Well, this bill could compel them not to listen to me or not to use the stronger algorithms. And these services process your credit card. All right. So that's bad. That's bad stuff. That's bad for everyone. It processes your credit card, your personal identifiable information, your name, your address, email, all that stuff. If you don't want that sent across the internet with weak encryption, I work in a hacking environment, and we attack crypto all the time. And weak encryption is bad news, and we can defeat weak encryption now. If I can do it, then the government can just wreck through it bad. Yeah. So I support super strong encryption, and the stronger the better. And this bill is very scary with regards to that. So that's one of my biggest fears with that bill, and I hope it does not affect the crypto space or scares companies from trying to engage in the crypto. We need big companies to join. Even Facebook was wanting to make their own little cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah,
and that's cool. Even if it was kind of a weird, weirdly built system, I support them building it and throwing their hat in the ring and go for it. That's just awesome. One of the largest companies in the world want to build their own crypto.
Yeah, they see the need for it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So
we'll definitely link to that change.org, because I have read about that bill, and it to me it reeks of the Patriot Act, like in a time of crisis and panic, the government we're doing our best to keep you safe, and then passed a bill that had nothing to do with any of that, and encryption, they can spin it like, it keeps, it keeps everything up front, so we know what's going on and we can investigate stuff and keep you safe, you know. And it's like, I think a lot of people like would realize like, well, what does that have to do with our public health and pandemic stuff, you know, and not support that. But it is one of those things, it seems they're just trying to sneak in, you know, while people aren't paying attention.
Exactly. And panic is the best time.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look on the news, have you seen any impeachment news articles? No, it's gone. It just went away.
No.
You know, and you know, the day before all this stuff kicked off, it was nothing but impeachment articles. You know, news articles.
And you know, I mean, obviously, we wake up in a new reality every day.
Sure.
But you know, I try to get a well-rounded scientific understanding of the virus pandemic and a global view, and not just, you know, listen to what Dr. Fauci's saying or whatever, you know, we do listen to what our government health officials are saying, but you know, they have a rhetoric that they're trying to stick to in order to get everyone to, you know, go according to their plan. And I do think we will get to a point, where either it's once, you know, we've flattened the curve and our healthcare system can handle it, or the FDA finally like approves, you know, some of these therapies that other countries are recommending to use to treat their COVID patients. It's not like some crackpot conspiracy theory. It's just that the FDA is like, no, don't use these drugs. You know, you might get a heart arrhythmia, you know, like we would rather you die from COVID because we need your statistics. I don't know what the point is of the FDA not giving emergency permission, but regardless, I think they will approve that. And then all of a sudden you're just not even going to hear the new numbers. Like, obviously we're always going to remember the virus, and people are going to be catching it and getting sick with it and dying from it for quite some time,
for years.
But I think they will like, they will switch to campaign mode and presidential election mode like that. And all you will hear is recovery of the of jobs and infrastructure and all of these things. And you're going to have to really dig down or scroll down your Google News to find out what the new cases were and how many new cases there were and where there's a new outbreak. They are just not going to cover it anymore. They are going to switch everybody's attention immediately. And like, I you know, it's so weird that I see that coming, but that's exactly what's going to happen, just the way they did with the impeachment. You know, where everyone's like, oh, impeachment this. What about Biden's son in Ukraine? What about that? You know, that's what everyone was saying. It's like, nobody even knows Biden has a son right now, you know? Like, it's totally, that is out of the news.
He doesn't even know.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Exactly.
He forgot his name, I'm sure. Yeah. You know, but yeah, it's like, it's such a weird time. And like I said at the start, it's, you know, I've never been more proud to own Bitcoin and crypto and everything. Sure. And I know that people are starting to feel that too, because it's like, seriously, the last month I've gotten so many messages from people who are like, you know, all right, I think I'm ready to buy this Bitcoin stuff. What's the app I get? You know, or stuff like that. And it's like,
you know. Send them your Coinbase referral link, so you get a couple. Get a free Litecoin out of it or something.
It's like that.
I'm with you. The prospect 5 years from now, when we look back at the timeline of Bitcoin, I think I'm very optimistic that Bitcoin will be the great winner at this point in time, in the next few months. And not because of price. Maybe even if the price goes down, I think what we'll see is the ability and the utility of Bitcoin to continue while the dollar falters and falls apart, banks fall apart. You see the utility of the US dollar falling apart, and that will be a scary, scary world for the people in the US dollar landscape. Seeing retirements explode. We already see right now people's 401ks being limited, the matching being removed, that sort of stuff. And that's hitting home right there already. I mean, you're losing that money right now. You're losing all, you know, that's for a lot of people, that's their only retirement. And and I think it's going to cause an influx, not a lot, probably. I don't think everyone's going to jump over to the Bitcoin, but I think it's going to raise some eyebrows when people who pay attention to their money see their money falling apart, and then they look over to the left and there's this Bitcoin network that their crazy cousin has been talking about for years, and he's just like sitting there happy playing on his Xbox all day long because he has no worries that it's just going to disappear on him. Yeah. And Uncle Joe's going to be like, well, you know what, maybe I should move some money over there, not as an investment, but as the ability to use it. Yeah. And your one Bitcoin that you put in your hardware wallet 5,000 years from now will be one Bitcoin. Yep. And no matter what, it will be mathematically secured as one Bitcoin. And like I said earlier, the timing of this halving with the COVID thing is just, I think the halving's like near the end of May, and they want to extend this. The CDC wants to extend it to the 20th of May or so. And let's just say that's a valid number, and they're like, okay, we're done. Everyone go back to work. Stock market go, right? Yeah. And it correlates with the Bitcoin halving so perfectly. I could just imagine Bitcoin going to $1 billion in like one day, just because everyone's like, here we go. Yeah. It could be just a stunning moment in history.
No, like you said, and all the halvings have matched up to significant quantitative easing and everything. I could totally see the timing of like everyone, we have this back to work reversal rally in global markets right as the halving happens. I could see that. Gosh. Man. Yeah, I could really see that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to May.
Yeah. Well, we're at an hour and a half, man, and we can wrap it up. But it's great talking to you, and definitely want to do this again too, man. So
for sure, yeah. Especially during the halving, or maybe like like as the halving is happening, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if you can do it live or something, but that would be fantastic to spectate that and call the fight on that one. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys having me on again. I really like talking to you guys, and I really like the Discord group that you have, and really like the crew out there. It's really, really great, and I really appreciate the chance to talk.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your participation in the Discord, man.
Thank you.
I really value everyone on there. So
great people.
Yep. So thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thank you, appreciate it.
As always, thank you for listening to the Help Find the Others podcast. Please don't forget to check out our Discord server to connect with our growing community. The link to join can be found in the description. And if you feel like donating to our channel to help us grow, a link to our Patreon can also be found in the description, as well as some cryptocurrency wallet addresses. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast or have any questions about these topics, please email helpfindtheothers@protonmail.com. If you would like to leave a voicemail or a text message question for a future episode, Stan, what's that number again?
567-233-1335.
Okay, guys, thanks again. And until next time, let's help find the others.